Hello, this is Joe Pryor, the virtual real estate team in Oklahoma, where we specialize in investment real estate in the residential markets of Tulsa and Oklahoma City. I've always said, and you've heard me say this for years now, the fourth quarter is the time for investors to get busy and buy property. Number one, because the owner-occupants are not doing anything at this time. They're typically doing it in the spring or summer, and holidays are coming up, so they want to spend time with their family and make merry. So investors typically can get the best deals now. That's the good news. But there's some not so good news, which is what's the best rental season in our market of Oklahoma? And it can vary from state to state. For instance, Florida kind of has a reverse market where winter is really important because people like to be warmer. But in Oklahoma, it's a school-driven market. And so from about March until about the third week of July, tends to be the strongest time. So what do we do in the fourth quarter? What do we do in November and December and even January, the first quarter? It's very simple. Number one, if they're not willing to do a 2-year lease, we're not going to give them a 2-year lease. All right, but remember this, in our markets, we're getting 2-year leases with 50% at this point. People are locking in for a longer period of time. That's fantastic for you. Think about taking all of that vacancy out. And the first rent is always the hardest because you don't own the property yet. The second rent, the third rent, and on and on and on are much easier because you got 45 days to market the property. So you may have 1 week out of the year, for a vacancy because we've already got the tenant. That's part of the good news. Now, what if they don't want that? And they say, well, I just want to rent for a year. I got an 830 credit score and, I would rather go ahead and buy a house, I'm kind of reconnoitering the market. Well, in that case, we don't do it. And the reason why we don't do it is because we'd rather get you into a prime season. So let's say it's December and 12 months would be December to December. Well, why not 16 months and get you into April? That's what we do. Now, we may take a little bit lower in rent to get them to do the 16 months. But again, remember that first one's the hardest one. You get somebody quickly and you have an extra 4 months of non-vacancy. And remember, you've got that 45-day window, but we also have a high percentage of renewals. And so that is a really good news when you talk to our property managers. They're really fantastic getting people to go. In fact, 2.5 to 3 years is fairly normal at this point. Now, finally, let me say this. There is one type of lease we're not going to do. That is a 6-month lease, okay? That does give you into prime season. That's the good news. The bad news is that every time you get a tenant, a property manager is going to charge you for that. They've got to vet that tenant. They've got to look at the background. They've got to look at criminal history. They've got to advertise for that person. And so not only are you paying a monthly fee, but you're paying the normal price for a year or 2-year lease or a 14-month lease or a 16-month lease the same way. And then all of a sudden, 6 months later, you got to pay it again. This affects your return on investment, and that's what we don't want for you. When we compute return on investment, we want double digits every year. We want an annualized return on investment of after tax of 12 to 13%, before tax 16 to 19%. That's how much you make on your money if we can avoid vacancy and if we don't have a lot of upfront costs for you. So understand, we do some little bit of a magic act when it comes to the fourth quarter, the first part of the first quarter. We get you out of that season, we get you some extra time, and we get you more money. And that's the important thing.